Okay, great. So before we jump in, one last time, si desea que esta presentación sea traducida en español, puede seleccionar el icono a la derecha de su pantalla en la esquina inferior. Selecciona el icono y de las opciones oprima español. Okay, wonderful. So hello, everyone. I am Bianca Delgado, the Los Angeles County Coordinator at Golden State Opportunity. Thank you again for joining us on our Financial Wellbeing webinar series. Okay, so before we jump in, I want to share a little more on Golden State Opportunity and our mission. So here at GSO, we are dedicated to ending poverty and providing all Californians with the tools to build financial security and thrive. We develop and lead statewide outreach programs to spread awareness on the Cali IGC, and this is all an effort to uplift working Californians. We're very excited to have you with us on our Financial Wellbeing webinar series. These free webinars will be hosted every month in collaboration with local organizations to help you better understand and protect your personal finances. In collaboration with New Economics for Women, we'll go over how to plan and pay for college. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, I ask that you please type them into the chat box, and I will read them out loud during our Q&A portion. So it's my pleasure to introduce Edna Garcia. She's part of the College Corner team with New Economics for Women, and she'll be leading the rest of this presentation. So Edna, if you'd like to take it from here.
Hi, everybody. So as Bianca mentioned, my name is Edna Garcia. I just want to first off start off by giving you guys a little bit of background about myself. So I grew up in the San Fernando Valley, and for undergraduate, I went up to UC Davis. So I moved out of my house and was able to live on campus at UC Davis for 4 years. And then I came back to the Valley and started working within the nonprofit sector, providing support to students and families, one from first generation and who are also low income. Because for myself personally, going to college was something that was new to not only myself, but for my family. So it was a big transition for me, and I just wanted to come back to my community and be able to support students as they transition to college. And through that, I was able to learn about financial aid, able to learn how to pay for college, and make sure that I was financially stable as I navigated college. So Bianca will go ahead and add just a couple of questions on the chat. So if you could, please just go ahead and answer the first question on the poll. The first one is, do you feel like you can afford college? It's either a yes or no response. And then the second one is going to be a true or false. You need to have money saved in order to go to college. So just go ahead and answer those questions for me. And then just so we can get a better understanding of who is in the webinar today. Okay, Bianca, do you know if everyone has submitted their response?
Not just yet, but we do have a couple. 7 out of 16 folks say that they don't feel like they can afford college.
Okay.
And then on the true or false, you need to have money saved in order to go to college. 6 of you said true and 3 believe false.
Okay, perfect. So basically, this presentation is gonna talk a little bit more about what students' options actually are when they are going to go to college, and that is financially. A big misconception that throughout the years that I have worked in financial aid and in college readiness programs, I have seen that a lot of families, they believe that because they, one, are considered low income to moderate income, that they can't afford college for their children, and therefore the students feel limited when they actually start applying to colleges. And that I'm here to tell you guys that that is a big misconception. And throughout the presentation, we will talk a little bit more about, okay, how is it that we can actually pay for college? And let's go ahead and get started. So as I was saying, there will be 3 questions that we will be addressing throughout this presentation. The first one is, how much does college actually cost? And then the second one is, how can a student pay for college if they do not have any money saved? And the third one is going to be, how does the student receive money to actually go to college? So just a fun fact, more than 72% of students attending a college in the US receive some form of financial assistance. And throughout the presentation, again, we will talk about what that financial assistance actually is and how a student can actually receive that financial assistance. So now we're going to address the college cost. I personally believe that knowledge is power, and hopefully with this information that you receive, you yourself as a parent and the students feel a little bit more empowered at the end of the presentation when it actually comes time to apply to college and receive money to go to college. So throughout the presentation, you will hear the term financial aid. I don't know if any of you have ever heard this term, but financial aid is basically money that a student is going to be given to help pay for college. This money comes from the government, whether it's federal government, the state, or an institution. So the college that the student actually goes to. So one thing I also want to address is when a student is applying to college, they will see a lot of numbers in the school's websites when it comes to the actual cost of college. They're going to see tuition. They're going to see how much it costs for their books, for their dorm room, and transportation. They're going to see a lot of different numbers, and that can be pretty overwhelming for the family in itself. And then they end up seeing a really big number when they are actually applying to college, which can sometimes intimidate students if they do not have money saved. And I do not want you to be intimidated by this number, because there has to be a big distinction between how much it actually costs to go to college and the budget. So the budget is what we consider the net price. The net price is actually how much a student has to pay for one academic school year after they subtract how much free money they're going to receive. And that is in form of scholarships and in grants. So please keep that in mind as we go throughout this presentation. And as I said, please focus on the net price, which is the actual cost of the student going to college, rather than the sticker price, which is how much the school suggests that it may cost a student to go to college. And why is the net price important? Because it gives you a better idea of how much a student will have to pay for a particular college, even if they do have to pay, because a lot of the time students don't have to pay anything if the family is considered low to moderate income. And then a second reason why it is important to know the net price is because it makes comparing colleges a lot easier. So once a student starts applying to college, towards sometime in February or March, they receive what they call the cost of attendance. And this makes, they're going to receive that cost of attendance, that package, the budget to actually go to that school for every school that they apply to and get admitted to. So now the student has to sit down with their family and see, okay, how much is it actually going to cost me and my family to go to this school? So it just makes the process a lot easier and a lot smoother for the families. And again, it widens the students' choices. Because I know a lot of the times when a student is applying to college and is actually deciding on what college they want to go to, the family and the student consider how much money they are going to be receiving in the form of financial aid that allows them to determine what college they end up going to. So this is just an example of what I was talking about earlier. This is the cost of attendance for one school. This is a CSU, I believe. And you see here all these big numbers. So you see tuition and fees, books and supplies, room and board. That's basically living on campus, transportation and personal expenses and loan fees. A lot of the students and families see these numbers and immediately get intimidated by this. And what I want you to remember is that you just have to worry about the net price, which is this number right here, the tuition and fees, because that is how much the student is going to be billed on every year on their student account. And that for total for one CSU right now, it's at $7,000. And everything else is variable. It changes. If a student is going to be living at home with their parents, they are obviously not going to be paying $7,000 for their room and board, because hopefully the parents are able to support them and they won't have to pay rent or anything like that. Books and supplies, of course, there's so many resources on campus that allow students not to have to pay for their books. Some supplies, yes, you have to pay on your own. Transportation, again, this, let's say you're taking the bus, you are not gonna be having to pay this amount. So big takeaway here is that when you are planning for deciding what college you are gonna go to, always look at the net price, which is just going to be the tuition and fees. And everything else, keep in mind that it changes. It's not exact. So now we're going to talk about what types of financial aid are actually available to students. We're going to address what money there is that is free that's available to students. Who doesn't want free money to go to college? The two forms of financial aid that a student can receive to go to college is what is called grants and scholarships. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit more about grants. Grants are available to students. These are the many different types of grants that are available to students after they submit an application. So there's the federal Pell Grant. You see this number right here, $6,345. Remember initially when we looked at the previous cost of attendance, the chart that I showed you guys, the cost of attendance for the tuition and fees was about $7,000. This, if a student qualifies for the Pell Grant, the school will automatically cover that cost. So they don't have to worry about paying for their tuition and fees. And then there's many other forms of grants, which is free money, like the Cal Grant that a student can receive additionally to go to college. And then there's scholarships. There's multiple forms of scholarships that a student can receive to be able to actually go to college. And some of them are either through their school and they are eligible for these scholarships as soon as they apply. Then there's also scholarships based, like private scholarships. So a student can do their research as they are applying to colleges and see what private companies, organizations are providing scholarships for students, which can be in addition to the grants that they are going to be receiving. So there's these two forms of financial aid are available to students that are free money, which is, as you can see, it's a lot of money that students have access to. And then there's work study. Work study is just another form of financial aid that a student can qualify for. And all it basically is, it allows students to work on campus while they are attending school to be able to pay mostly for their personal expenses. I myself, as an undergraduate student, was a work study student, and it was such a great opportunity for me. One, because it provided me with the professional experience so that once I graduated college, it made it a little bit easier for me to find a job. So that's one pro about work study. And the second one is that usually the minimum wage for a student who's working on campus through work study is higher than if you go, let's say, work at Jack in the Box or In-N-Out or at a retail store. And another thing that the students have access to if they decide to work on campus through work study, their employer understands that school comes first. So they have to prioritize that as well. So if, let's say, you have midterms coming up, finals coming up, and you request time off, legally, your employer cannot deny that because you are a work-study student. I see there's a question on the chat. Okay. And then, give me 1 second. And then there's loans. Loans is another option that students have access to. It is a form of financial aid that is available to students. If you do not need to take out these loans, do not take them out. But my recommendation usually for students who, let's say, have maxed out on all the free money that they can get in form of grants or scholarships, and let's say they need to pay for their rent and they don't have that money anymore, usually this is the next step I give students is take out a small portion of your student loan, because student loans, one, the interest rate is usually a lot lower and the repayment plans are usually a lot better. This is another form of financial aid that is available to students once they start college, but a lot of the time students do not need to take them out because the financial aid that they do receive in forms of grants and scholarships does tend to be a lot higher than what it actually costs to go to that school. So now let's talk about the process. So now you've heard me basically talk about how much money a student can receive if they decide to go to college. How does a student actually receive this money? I'm sure you are wondering that. The way a student can receive all this money is if they file their FAFSA. So each year, the federal government awards roughly $150 billion to college students through need-based grants, loans, and work-study funds. So this means that there is so much money out there and that is available to students who want to go to college. The first step in you actually being able to receive that free money is filing your FAFSA. It is required. Give me 1 second. So it is required for you to actually submit your FAFSA in order for your prospective college, whatever college you decide to go to, for them to actually be able to award you this free money in forms of grants, scholarships, and loans. Loans, usually they offer you loans. You do not have to take those loans out. Just something for you to keep in mind as well. And then in order for you to actually qualify for financial aid, your parents need to have filed their for this upcoming school year, parents need to have filed their 2019 taxes. I know Bianca's gonna send out resources if, let's say, your parents have not filed their 2019 taxes yet, for them to be able to actually still complete their taxes, because there is still time for you to do that. So when do you submit this application to receive financial aid? The application actually became available October 1st, and it is going to be open up until March 2nd. So students have from October 1st to March 2nd of next year, 2021, to submit this financial aid application. And this is what the website looks like for students who will be submitting their FAFSA. Students initially have to create an account, and once they create an account, they can go ahead and submit the application. It is roughly about a 45-minute to an hour long application that you can submit. And for that, you do need, one, your Social Security, and two, you will need, again, your parents' 2019 taxes. And if you guys ever have questions about how to actually complete the application on this website, there is a hotline number that you can call. and there will be a representative that can guide you throughout the whole process. And then for students who are considered dreamers, so rule of thumb, if a student has been attending high school for the last 3 years, but they don't have a social security number, they submit the DREAM Act application. This is another it's the same application as the FAFSA, but this is just for students who don't have a social security, but have been attending high school for the last 3 years, or have been attending college for the last 3 years in combination with high school for the last 3 years. And for that, again, you do need your parents' 2019 taxes. So some tips for college students. So great, you now submitted your FAFSA or your DREAM Act application. Next step is for you to actually apply for outside scholarships that are considered private scholarships. A great resource that I have found that is very helpful for students is what is called Immigrant Rising organization. They have, if you Google that, they have a lot of free scholarships that students can apply to up until next year. They don't require much. A lot of them just require like 1-page essay or for you to answer some questions. So that is another way for you to get more money to be able to go to college. And then another thing, once you're actually in school, if you put on your application, on your FAFSA application, that you want to be considered for work study and you are eligible for work study, get a job on campus. The jobs on campus through work study are very lenient. Like for myself, I worked in the financial aid office as an undergraduate student. The job wasn't too difficult. It was very manageable for me to do my full work 15 to 20 hours a week and also be able to focus on my schooling. And then another thing, a lot of students do not know that once they're in college, they can qualify for CalFresh, even if they are living with their parents. The big rule of thumb is if you receive the Pell Grants through your award package, you usually automatically qualify for CalFresh, and you will get about $190 every month just to pay for your food. And then at the end, there will be a link for you to actually do a little bit more research and submit that application if you like. And then a lot of campuses, whether it's CCs, community colleges, UCs, privates, all of them usually have on-campus food pantries. You just have to go to your school's either financial aid office or resource center, and they will give you weekly information about food pantries that are available to students. And another thing, a lot of students who are first generation, so they are the first person in their family to go to college and are considered low to moderate income, have the option of being a part of what they call the EOP program. This is a program that's available to these students, one, to be able to get additional free money to cover for their expenses and to get books, to get additional support, one-on-one counseling. So these are some of the things that I usually suggest students who are in college or transitioning to go to college to start looking at all these things. So now for resources. So we talked about the FAFSA, which is called the Federal Student Aid website. You can go on here and start creating your account so that you can submit your application to qualify for all the free grants that I just gave you guys information about, along with scholarships. And then for the Dreamer students, so those students who don't have social security numbers, but have been in high school for a minimum of 3 years, they can submit their DREAM Act application to also qualify for the free grants and scholarships. And then here is the website for students who want to apply for CalFresh when they go to college. And the first link right here, it is a financial aid toolkit that will give you a brief overview of, you can input your family's income for 2019, and then it will tell you based on their income how much free money you will be eligible for once you start college. And that's pretty much it for me. Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, if folks want to type in their questions into the chat box, I'll read them out loud. And it does look like we have a few questions actually. One in particular, do we apply for loans outside of financial aid?
That is a great question. So you do not have to apply for loans outside of financial aid. When you are planning to go to college, the main thing, and usually the only thing that you have to do, is submit your FAFSA or DREAM Act application. That one application will give you access to the loans. The student loans will give you access to the grants like Cal Grant, Pell Grant, University Grant, and will also give you access to scholarships. Once you submit that application, it's really up to the schools that you are applying to provide you with an award letter saying, this is how much free money we can give you, this is how many loans we can offer you based on your parents' income taxes, basically their income from 2019. So the lower the income is of your parents, the higher the free money that you will qualify for. So you do not need to apply for loans outside. Just because you submitting that financial aid application will give you access to loans. You don't have to accept the loans that you are offered, but it is an option that you do have access to.
Great, thank you. I'm going to split this next question into two. So are there any resources or financial aid for vocational training or for anyone that wants to go that route?
Yeah, there is. So if you want to go the route of vocational training, there is financial aid available. I will say the financial aid that is available in form of free money, like grants or scholarships, is reduced. But all you have to do again is submit your FAFSA application. And then let's say you're thinking of going to Glendale Career College. You submit your FAFSA to them, and then they will get back to you with an award letter kind of saying, okay, this is how much money we can offer you, whether it's in loans, scholarships, grants, or a combination. And it's really up to you to review that award letter and see if it is beneficial for you to go to that school based on the money that they are offering you.
Okay, and a follow-up to that is, what about graduate school?
Graduate school. So graduate school, you submit your FAFSA, but for graduate schools, it's very rare that they offer free money. They usually just offer students loans, whether that's in subsidized or unsubsidized loan. They usually just offer students loans. At that point, it's really up to the student to look for outside scholarships. Again, great resource is Immigrants Rising. They have a lot of scholarships, like a list of scholarships that students can apply to for graduate school. So if you are looking into going to graduate school, I suggest you take a look at that website and apply for outside scholarships, just because the financial aid that you will be eligible for as a graduate student is very limited. Usually they only offer loans.
Okay, thank you. So another one. Will applying for financial aid or stating that I need financial assistance affect my chances of being admitted?
Well, applying for financial aid, no. So that's a very big misconception. A lot of students think that because they are applying for financial aid, the school for some reason can look at that as a negative way. That is not at all actually true. Schools, when you are being admitted into a college or you're going through the whole process, schools do not have access to that information. The only people who have access to that is the financial aid office within the school. And again, the lower the income of the family, the higher the need-based of financial aid is, which means that the student can qualify for much more free money than a student whose parents have higher income.
Thank you. Does my parents' citizenship status affect my financial aid?
Parents' status, citizenship status does not affect at all how much financial aid or any financial aid that the student can receive. The federal government does not look at that. When actually completing your FAFSA, if a parent does not have a social, you just write all zeros and they do not take that into account.
Thank you for clarifying that. Here is another question. If I win a scholarship, does it reduce my financial aid package?
If you win a scholarship, this is a tricky question, just because if you win a scholarship, depending on how much money you're getting from that scholarship, it could affect how much grants and other forms of financial aid you could receive. But there is that sweet spot, which a lot of the times I've seen can be like $5,000 to $10,000. Let's say you don't receive a scholarship that's higher than that. At that point, usually it doesn't affect how much financial aid you are already receiving. So at that point, you are just pocketing money and you're able to, whatever money is left over from the financial aid that you receive, whether that's grants, scholarships, you can pocket that money and use it for your personal expenses.
That definitely is a win-win. Okay, so I'm going to leave it open to any other questions. We're just going to wait a little bit. You're more than welcome to type in your questions. Okay, so we have one here. Can you explain unsubsidized and subsidized loans?
So unsubsidized loans, so there are two forms of loans that you can be offered through the federal government. There is the unsubsidized loan, which is basically all that is stating that if you take out that loan, you have 6 months after you graduate from college to start paying off that loan. But the only downside about that loan is that interest starts accruing as soon as you take out that loan. Whereas the subsidized loan, let's say you take it out your second year of college, no interest will start accruing until 6 months after you graduate college, and you will start making payments on that loan until 6 months after you graduate college.
Okay, thank you. Again, if anyone has any other questions, feel free to type them into the chat. I'm going to give it a few more minutes. And for those of you joining us on Facebook Live, we can definitely go back and answer any questions you have in the comments. So even though we won't be able to answer them live, we'll definitely go back and answer those. Okay, so it seems like there's no more questions. We can move on to the next slide. Okay. So as I've previously mentioned, we'll be hosting monthly webinars. Each webinar will cover a different topic about personal finance and financial well-being. If you would like to stay up to date with upcoming webinars, you can follow our social media platforms, or you can even register on our website. All those handles are there. This webinar will be posted on our Facebook account, so if you didn't get the chance to jot down some notes, or if you want to refer back, we'll be sending you the resources that Edna mentioned in the presentation and any other links. Thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you on our next webinar on November 18th. So we'll be covering affordable healthcare. So again, thanks for joining us. Thank you, Edna, for sharing your knowledge and this information. We'll be sharing her contact info as well. So I hope everyone stays safe and have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you.